in terms of the four roots of evil, you mentioned the means to an end, the egotism and revenge. The next one on the list that you describe in the book is sort of idealist and utopian ideas of what the world should look like and
Yes,
what we are prepared to do to get to that ideal world.
yes. And that one was the sad one for me to acknowledge because people are trying to do what's good and they think violent means are justified in it. And many of the biggest body accounts throughout history were the result of that because it's often not an individual, but more of a collective thing. That people together, maybe we can go back to the wars of religion, where people killed other people based on having different ideas of who is God or what is Scripture. Even among the Christians, disagreeing. Well, the Protestants and the Catholics disagreed, and the Albigensian heresy. Small disagreements about religious truth set people against each other and killed them, but they thought they were doing God's work by killing the people on the other side. Same in the 20th century, the bloody movements there. We can look at the China purges under Mao Zedong, the Soviet ones under Joseph Stalin, um, the National Socialists under Hitler, and the Nazis. All of them thought they were trying to make a better society. They had positive goals, and violence was just a means of getting rid of other people who were in the way, who were blocked the progress. So, of course, it was terrible for millions of victims to be killed
Mm-hmm.
in awful ways and murdered or executed, in some cases starved to death. Of course, to them, it's evil, and I think we need to recognize it as such. But to understand the psychology of the perpetrators, we have to understand they were often doing what they thought of was a positive good. I think what struck me, I think Robert Conquest's book on the terror famine, if I remember the name right, in the Ukraine under Stalin in the 30s, and they'd had back and forth about. I think communism said it should be collective effort, and so they abolished private farms and had the collective farms, which weren't producing enough food because without individual responsibility, people aren't motivated enough. And then they would let them have their own farms that they could work on one day a week, as long as they worked on the collective farm the rest of the week. But then the private farms were producing more food than the collective farms, even though one day a week. And so Stalin said, all right, well, no more of that. And finally starved them to death, went and confiscated all their food, and millions of people starved to death, which is an awful way to die. Anyway, I remember reading accounts about some young men who took part in that, and they said it was just awful to go into this poor family's house and go through the cupboards and take the last little food that they have while the woman is screaming and the children are crying. And they said, but we had to tell ourselves that this is what was needed for the revolution to make the paradise, the socialist paradise on earth, and we had to stop our ears and not give in to bourgeois sensitivity of feeling pity for them. And so that really captured for me the inner struggle for people who were hurting people by condemning them to starve to death. Um, and they had the natural human decency that this is a terrible thing, but they had to convince themselves that it is my duty to do that because the world will be a better place because of that, because of my efforts. And it's too bad for these people, but that's necessary part of the revolution that will make the world a fair and equal and flourishing place. So so yes, I mean we see all political stripes and, as I said, religious and various others. Uh, Lots of people have been recruited into taking part in evil mass movements by the belief that they were doing good and that that's what was necessary.
I think the really sad thing about the horrors of the 20th century, and I come from Poland, so that was one of the scenes when a lot of that
All right, yeah,
unfolded. And the sad thing that I see in the West is that people really think that we now are different to our ancestors from, let's say, 90, 80 years ago. And I don't think that we are that different. Like, I don't think that we can just look at what's been going on in the communist countries, for example, in Ukraine, in Maoist China, in Germany, and just think we would never do that. And part of the reason, like, let's try and give the devil its due. Let's say that I genuinely believe that if I was to kill 10 people, like, let's select them randomly there, we will bring this ideal world, utopia, it will be amazing, will cure all cancer. Why would you not kill those 10 people if you genuinely believe that you're saving thousands? Like, there is a hard argument to be made against that. The problem is that we are then assuming that our beliefs are right, that system that we envisage as ideal is indeed ideal. And I think it's that sort of grandiose importance, trying to play God too much,
yeah,
which actually turns people to do some truly horrible acts. And I think the fact that all of these horrors happened in so many places just really should be a bit of the alarm for people that it's not just Germans. There is nothing special about Germans. There is nothing special about Chinese people. There is nothing special about Russians. But then, even if you did believe that there is something culturally not quite as moral about these nations as, for example, there would be in nations from the Western world, the few things that are less known in the history is some of the atrocities that, for example, Poles did take part during the Second World War. So there is just horrible mass murder of Jews that was perpetrated by Christians, by Poles, in the small village called Jedwabne, where in one day they've literally, Polish people, Polish Christians turned on Jews. I think it was in July 1941, and they've literally rounded up all of the Jews from the village and burned them in the barn. There was over 1,000 people that were killed in one day. But Poles are always seen as a victim in the Second World War. So, but nobody really wanted to look into what would cause a village of people to just turn on their neighbors. There was so much, I think, from the 20th century that we wanted to just forget and to move past
yes,
without really trying to understand it.
yes. Well, when I wrote that book, I read, of course, a lot of the other books on evil, and most of them would sort of focus on the most extreme things. Can you believe this horrible thing this person did? It's incomprehensible how someone could do that. And I wanted to have the opposite. I wanted people to read the book and the stories I put in, and so on, that they could say, well, if I were in that situation, maybe I would do that too. Because I think that's the challenge, is what enables ordinary people to get swept up into this. The Poles killing your neighbors, the way the Germans had informed on them and participated in sending them off to their death too. We saw in the 90s several places, Yugoslavia, uh, degenerated into very violent mass killing. Africa, the Rwanda situation. Again, people, I mean, that was especially chilling because people didn't even have guns or or whatever. They were sort of taking the cleaver, the knives from their kitchens across the street to kill their
Mm.
neighbors, just to kill them. Um, so that clearly is something that happens, and we have not changed that much. It is still possible in there. The best is the warnings of the past to realize that the end does not justify the means, no matter how good the end is. Yet modern American university students often still believe this. The morality research now has what they call the trolley problem, which you may have heard of, but it's a dilemma. There's a runaway trolley, and there are 5 people working on the tracks that are all going to be killed. You can throw the switch and shift the trolley onto a different track, but it will kill someone. It will kill one person. So you're basically killing one to save 5. And it corresponds to the example you gave before, that if you killed these 10 people, then lots of others would benefit and be better off. And, well, there's a strong moral case that that's the right thing to do. And many people endorse that and say, yes, I would sacrifice the one to save the 5. They say this hypothetically. I don't know that they actually would do this.
Mm-hmm.
In crucial crisis situations like that, people often freeze. Plus, if you take action, you are responsible. I mean, the runaway trolley kills the 5 people. Well, that's bad. But if you throw the switch, you would be responsible for the other person's death, including legally as well as morally. So you're quite possibly sacrificing yourself. So when they run these simulations live, people don't quite go along with it, but they at least say, in principle, yes, I think it would be the right thing to do to kill one person to save 5 other lives.